When people think of poker in the Czech Republic, they immediately think of the King's Resort. However, as a recreational player on a travel budget, I was unable to travel to Rosvadov and had to travel to Prague instead. I was only in Prague for about 2 days, and in that 2 days, I had only 2 hours of free time available. So I went to the nearest casino that I could find. Casino Ambassador is conveniently located in the center of Prague, within walking distance of attractions such as the Charles Bridge. I went in there at 10 p.m. on a weekday and it was buzzing with activity. There were 5 full tables running, but what surprised me the most was that I saw stakes that I never expected to see in a casino. No limit 40. I hopped into the lower stakes to see what it was like. So with the smallest game being 10-20 Czech crowns, that is equivalent to about 40 cents euros and 80 cents euros, with the buy-in being at minimum of 40 euros and maximum of 80 euros. Nothing much happened earlier on until I got ace queen off in a small blind. There was one limb and the button makes it 140 crowns. I 3-bet to about 450 crowns and only the button calls. This was really surprising given how tight the game was played. The flop comes King Deuce Deuce Rainbow, and I wasn't sure what the button had, so I decided to check and he checks back. The turn comes an offsuit ace and now on the board is Ace King Deuce Deuce, which means that we are chopping with all other aces. I think if I bet here, he can only call me with an ace, whereas if I check, he could bet with pretty much anything. So with that being said, I decided to check, and now he bets 200 crowns, which is quite a small bet. I just call his turn bet because there is no value in raising. The river comes a blank, and I check with the intention of calling most bets. He checks behind and tables pocket queens. However, there was one thing that really stood out in his hand, and it was my opponent's body language. I don't think you will see this much in higher stake games. So what happened during the hand was that on the flop of King Deuce Deuce, my opponent actually sort of threw his arms in the air, which I thought that he could actually be faking it. But then on the turn, when the ace came, he sort of covered his face with his hands and let out a huge sigh. So at that point, I figured that he probably had something, but that it was weaker than an ace or a king. I also observed other things that I normally wouldn't see in the higher stake cash games. There was a guy who was clearly a new player, and he never knew when it was his turn. So the dealer had to keep telling him that it was his turn and his available options, whether to check, bet or fold. So there was one hand where he caught another player down with just jack high, and the other player had the nut flush. It wasn't a huge pot, it was probably about 1,500 crowns, which is about 60 euros. But still, this highlights the difference in players that you see in the lower stake cash games and other cash games that wouldn't run this low. Overall, I had a great time and it was a very good way to spend 2 hours. The atmosphere was great, and if I had more time, I would get a drink and play longer. There was some good competition and it was a fun game despite the blinds being lower than what I'm used to. I also think that it is the perfect place for a beginner to go and learn to play. Unfortunately, I had to cut the session short since I had plans the next morning. I ended the night up about 1,500 Czech Republic crowns, which is about 60 euros.